The autumn wind howled through the cemetery, sharp and unforgiving, tugging at the yellowed leaves that clung desperately to gnarled trees. Emily stood alone, her thin coat offering little protection against the chill that seeped into her bones. Her eyes, red from crying, followed the slow descent of her grandmother Mary's coffin into the cold earth. Each tear that fell seemed to freeze on her cheeks, leaving a prickling sting that mirrored the ache in her heart. Mary had been more than a grandmother. She'd been Emily's anchor, her guide, her confidant, filling the roles of mother, father, and best friend. Now, with her gone, the world felt vast and empty, and Emily was adrift, a solitary figure in a sea of grief. Across the cemetery, her sister Sarah stood like a shadow from another life, tall, poised, her elegant black suit impeccable against the somber backdrop. She looked less like a grieving granddaughter and more like a corporate executive, her presence polished and detached. Sarah had left their small provincial town years ago, chasing ambition in a distant city where she'd carved out a glittering career. Her visits home had dwindled to rare, fleeting appearances, each one underscoring the growing distance between the sisters. Sarah was fire and drive, always reaching for the next rung on the ladder of success. Emily was quiet, introspective, content with the simple rhythms of life. Their differences had once been a source of playful teasing, but now they formed a chasm, deep and unbridgeable, as cold as the autumn air around them. As the sparse crowd of mourners began to disperse, their footsteps crunching on the gravel path, Sarah approached Emily. Her eyes, sharp and unreadable, avoided Emily's tear-streaked face, focusing instead on some distant point. "I have to leave today," Sarah said, her voice clipped, businesslike. "Work's piling up, you know how it is." Emily nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I understand," she managed to whisper, though the words felt hollow. "The will is being read tomorrow at the notary's office. Be there." Sarah's tone was final, and without waiting for a response, she turned and strode toward her car, a sleek, gleaming machine that stood out like a beacon of modernity in the cemetery's bleak landscape. Emily watched her go, her heart sinking further. The sight of Sarah's retreating figure only deepened her sense of abandonment, as if the last threads connecting her to family were fraying before her eyes. The next day, the notary's office was a claustrophobic box of stale air and tension. Emily sat stiffly, her hands clasped in her lap, while her husband James loomed behind her, his presence heavy with disapproval. James had never hidden his disdain for grandmother Mary, dismissing her as a relic of a bygone era, her stories of wartime struggles and her cluttered old house filled with useless junk, an irritation he couldn't abide. To him, Mary's attachment to the past was a flaw, and Emily's quiet devotion to her grandmother was a source of constant frustration. The notary, an older man with a weary expression, cleared his throat and began reading Mary's will. Sarah was bequeathed a stunning seaside cottage, a dream property that perfectly suited her glamorous aspirations. Emily, however, inherited Mary's ancient Volga, a rusty, dilapidated car that hadn't moved from the garage in years. The words hung in the air, heavy and surreal, broken only by the faint rustle of the notary's papers. Sarah's eyebrows shot up, a mix of surprise and smug satisfaction flickering across her face. James let out a sharp, derisive laugh. "This is absurd!" James exploded, stepping forward, his face flushed with anger. "She gets a beach house and Emily's stuck with that worthless pile of scrap metal? There's got to be a mistake." The notary adjusted his glasses, unruffled. "This is the deceased's final wish. Everything is legally documented and binding." Sarah's lips curled into a condescending smile. "I'm thrilled about the cottage, of course," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But that Volga, it's practically a joke. Grandma must have been out of her mind." Emily sat in stunned silence, her mind a whirlwind of confusion. Why had Mary made this choice? The Volga was a relic, its paint chipped and faded, its body pockmarked with rust. In her childhood, Emily had loved listening to Mary's stories about the car, tales of dusty roads and secret errands. But those memories felt like fragments of a dream, distant and half-forgotten. What was her grandmother trying to tell her through this strange bequest? Back home, James's rage boiled over. In their cramped living room, he unleashed a torrent of venom, his words cutting deeper than any autumn wind. "You're useless, Emily!" he shouted, grabbing her shoulders, his fingers digging into her skin. "You can't even inherit something worth a damn." "Who needs that rusted-out wreck?" Emily tried to protest, her voice trembling. "It's not my fault, James." "I didn't ask for this." But James was deaf to her pleas, consumed by greed and fury. "Pack your things and get out," he roared, shoving her toward the door. "You're nothing to me anymore." The words hit like a physical blow. Emily stood frozen, disbelief washing over her. After years of marriage, of enduring James's moods, his criticisms, his control, how could he cast her aside so easily? "Where am I supposed to go?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't care," James snapped, his eyes cold. "Sleep on the street for all I care. I'm done with you." With a single suitcase in hand, Emily stumbled into the dusk, the world blurring through her tears. The town she'd known all her life felt foreign now, its familiar streets cold and unwelcoming. Her feet, almost of their own accord, led her to the old garage where the Volga stood. The car was a sorry sight, its once proud frame sagging under years of neglect, its surface marred by rust and peeling paint. Emily ran her hand over the cold metal, and a memory stirred. Mary's voice, warm and steady. "This car is more than just metal, Emily. It holds secrets, stories, a piece of our history." Fumbling in her coat pocket, she found the car keys tucked inside an envelope with a note, in Mary's elegant, slightly trembling handwriting. "This is for you, my dear. Don't be afraid." Emily clutched the keys, whispering, "Don't be afraid." As a spark of resolve flickered within her, Mary had believed in her, trusted her with something greater than a mere car. Whatever lay ahead, Emily would face it with the strength her grandmother had seen in her. Her hands trembled, not just from the biting cold, but from a mix of fear and anticipation. As she approached the trunk, the hinges groaned as she lifted the lid, revealing a dark, dusty interior. The air inside carried a faint, familiar scent of old rubber oil and something deeper, like the echo of Mary's warm embrace. Emily pulled out her phone, its flashlight casting a pale glow into the shadows. Her breath caught in her throat. Nestled in the trunk was a worn leather bag, its surface soft and weathered, as if it had been touched by countless hands over decades. Beside it sat a small, heavy metal safe, its surface dull but sturdy, and atop it a folded piece of paper. Emily's heart pounded as she reached for the bag first. The leather was supple, almost warm, as if it carried the memory of those who'd handled it before. Unzipping it, she gasped. Inside were dozens of black and white photographs, their edges frayed, their images faded, but alive with history. Young men and women in wartime uniforms stared back at her, some with weary eyes, others with faint, defiant smiles. They stood amid bombed-out ruins, leaned against tanks, or held rifles with steady hands. On the backs of some photos, hurried inscriptions told fragments of their stories. Michael, Anna, Nicholas, comrades at the front, Natalie, eternal memory. Tucked among the photos were brittle documents, commendations praising Mary's selfless work during the war, hand-drawn maps with cryptic red circles marking unknown locations, and letters folded with care, their ink faded but legible. Emily didn't yet understand their significance, but she felt the weight of a hidden truth, a secret Mary had guarded through decades of silence. Her hands shook as she turned to the metal safe, its combination lock unyielding under her fingers. She hadn't found a key, and no amount of force would budge it. Setting it aside, she unfolded the paper. A letter in Mary's familiar script, its rounded letters trembling slightly as if written in haste. "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, I'm no longer by your side. Don't fear what you find in this car. It's not just an old relic. It's a vessel of memory, a testament to those who gave everything for our homeland. Inside the safe is gold, hidden from the Nazis during the war, used to save countless lives. Now, it belongs to you. Decide its fate, but know this. Its true worth lies not in its shine, but in the stories it carries. And a word of caution. Don't trust Sarah. She's always chased wealth and status, blind to the deeper meaning of what I've left you. This is yours alone. Be brave." Emily sank to her knees beside the car, clutching the letter to her chest as tears spilled over. Her grandmother, so quiet and unassuming in life, had been a heroine, a keeper of secrets, a guardian of history. It was almost too much to comprehend, like stepping into a story that belonged to someone else. She stared at the safe, its contents a mystery. Gold. Why had Mary entrusted it to her, not Sarah, who seemed so much more capable, so much more confident? What was Emily supposed to do with this legacy? Then she remembered the diary. Mary's note had mentioned it. "You'll find my diary in the car. Read it. It holds the answers." Emily dove back into the trunk, her fingers sifting through photos and papers until they brushed something solid beneath the spare tire. A small leather-bound notebook, its cover worn but intact. She climbed into the Volga's driver's seat, the cold leather creaking under her weight, and opened the first page under the dim glow of her phone. 1941. War. Fear, devastation. But we will not surrender. We'll fight for our homeland until our last breath. The words pulled Emily into a world she'd never known. Mary's diary chronicled her life as a partisan courier, slipping through enemy lines to deliver messages, hiding refugees in secret safe houses, procuring weapons and medicine under the cover of night. Each entry was a testament to her courage, her resolve, her unshakable belief in freedom. Emily read spellbound, discovering a grandmother she'd never fully understood, a woman who faced death daily with a fire in her heart. One entry about the gold stopped her cold. Before the war, a wealthy merchant, sensing the coming darkness, had entrusted Mary with a cache of gold, coins, and bars, meant to be safeguarded until better times. He died in battle, leaving Mary as the gold's keeper. She used it to fund the resistance, bribing traitors, freeing prisoners, saving lives. "This gold isn't mine," Mary wrote. "I'm its keeper, entrusted to ensure it serves our people, our homeland, when the time comes." Emily read late into the night, the car's dim interior, her only shelter from the world outside. The diary revealed Mary's sacrifices, her family's resilience, the war's brutal toll. It was a window into a life of quiet heroism, of choices made under impossible circumstances. Mary's trust in Emily felt like both a gift and a burden. Why her? What was she to do with this legacy? How could she face Sarah, who'd dismissed their grandmother's memory with such casual disdain? Exhausted but resolute, Emily knew she couldn't betray Mary's trust. The next morning she began calling local museums, her hands trembling as she dialed. Their small town had only two, a local history museum and an art museum. The art museum's receptionist listened politely before redirecting her to the history museum, where a young historian named David answered. His voice, warm and curious, grew animated as Emily stammered through her story, the diary, the wartime photos, the documents. When she mentioned the gold, his tone shifted to barely contained excitement. "Please come to the museum as soon as you can," he urged, his enthusiasm palpable even through the phone. The History Museum was housed in a crumbling mansion, its faded grandeur a fitting backdrop for stories of the past. David, a tall, lanky man in his 30s, with bright eyes and a mop of unruly chestnut hair, greeted Emily with a warm handshake. His office was a chaotic haven of books, maps, and yellowed documents, the air thick with the scent of old paper. Emily carefully laid out the leather bag's contents, photos of stern-faced soldiers, commendations for Mary's wartime service, maps marked with cryptic red circles, letters folded with care. David handled each item with reverence, his questions sharp but gentle, his notebook filling with hurried scribbles. When Emily produced the key she'd found tucked among the documents and opened the safe, David's breath caught. Gold coins and bars gleamed in the dim light of his office, their surfaces etched with history, their weight a tangible link to a time of sacrifice and survival. "This is extraordinary," he whispered, his eyes wide with awe. "This isn't just treasure, it's a piece of history, a story that needs to be told. For days, the museum buzzed with activity. David and his team worked tirelessly cataloging the find, analyzing the diary, cross-referencing documents with archival records, and authenticating the gold. Emily watched, her heart swelling with pride as her grandmother's story came to life. The collection was a treasure trove of history. Mary's diary offered rare insights into a covert resistance network, detailing daring missions and quiet acts of heroism. The photos captured the faces of forgotten heroes, their eyes burning with determination. The gold, once a lifeline for the desperate, now stood as a testament to their courage. Word of the Volga treasure spread like wildfire. Local newspapers ran front-page stories, TV crews descended on the town, and websites buzzed with speculation. Journalists sought Emily for interviews, historians sought her insights, and locals shared their own memories of Mary, a quiet woman whose strength had touched countless lives. At first, Emily shrank from the attention, her shyness a barrier, but as she spoke of Mary's bravery, her voice grew steadier, her words infused with pride. She was telling her grandmother's story, preserving her legacy for the world. James predictably slithered back when he heard of the gold. His calls and texts flooded Emily's phone, each one dripping with false remorse, promises to change, and thinly veiled greed. But Emily saw through him now. His cruelty, his manipulation, his emptiness. "You think I'd go back after what you did?" she told him during one call, her voice steady and cold. "I'm not that woman anymore, James. I found my strength." Sarah, too, reached out, her tone deceptively casual. "We should decide together what to do with the gold," she suggested, as if she hadn't mocked the Volga as a worthless heap days earlier. Emily, with a bittersweet smile, reminded her of her disdain for their grandmother's memory. "I've made my choice, Sarah," she said firmly. "The gold, the diary, everything. It's going to the museum. This isn't about money. It's about honoring Mary's legacy." Sarah's response was a furious tirade, accusing Emily of squandering a fortune, of being naive and foolish. But Emily tuned her out, her resolve unshaken. She knew she was doing what Mary would have wanted, a choice rooted in love, not greed. With her belongings packed, Emily slid into the Volga's driver's seat. The car, once a symbol of her supposed failure, now felt like a chariot of liberation. Its creaking frame a reminder of her grandmother's enduring presence. She drove to the museum one last time, thanking David and his team for their dedication. "You've done something incredible, Emily," David said, his handshake warm and sincere. "You've preserved a piece of history. Your grandmother would be so proud." Emily smiled, her heart full. She knew he was right. As she drove out of town, the sunset painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, the weight of her past began to lift. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges, but Emily was ready. She carried Mary's memory, her courage, her belief in a better future. She was no longer the timid woman James had discarded. She was Mary's granddaughter, a descendant of a heroine, and she, too, was fearless. In her new city, Emily built a life of quiet contentment. She rented a cozy apartment in a peaceful neighborhood, its windows overlooking a tree-lined street far from the chaos of her past. Her job as a paramedic at a modern clinic brought purpose. She loved helping people, especially the elderly, whose resilience and stories reminded her of Mary. Her colleagues respected her skills, and her patients greeted her with gratitude, their smiles warming her heart like sunlight after a long winter. For the first time, Emily felt truly free. Free to make her own choices, to shape her own destiny, to live without fear. She thought often of James, of the years she'd spent under his shadow, enduring his insults, believing she deserved them. How had she let herself stay so long? It wasn't love, she realized, but a trap of dependency on his approval, his money, his false strength. Now she was her own anchor, her own strength, and the realization filled her with a quiet, unshakable joy. Sarah sent occasional photos from her seaside villa, gleaming white walls, a sparkling pool, palm trees swaying in the breeze. The images screamed success, but Emily sensed an emptiness behind them. Sarah never asked about Emily's life, her dreams, her struggles, only showcased her own triumphs, as if proving a point. Emily didn't envy her. She'd learned happiness wasn't in wealth or status, but in purpose, in helping others, in feeling whole within herself. The past no longer haunted her. It was a chapter of her story, one that had forged her into the woman she was. Strong, independent, unafraid. Without Mary, the Volga, the diary, and the trials she'd faced, she wouldn't have found this strength. She regretted nothing. In her free time, Emily dove deeper into her family's history. She contacted archives, pored over documents, and spoke with elderly villagers from Mary's hometown. She learned Mary had been a vibrant young woman, a poet and scholar with dreams of teaching, dreams the war had stolen. As a nurse, she'd braved battlefields to save soldiers. As a partisan, she'd risked everything to fight for freedom. After the war, she'd rebuilt her village, teaching children and nurturing a community with her quiet strength. One day, Sarah called, asking to visit. Emily welcomed the chance to reconnect, hoping to bridge the gap between them. When Sarah arrived, she was different, less guarded, more vulnerable. Over tea, she opened up about her loneliness, her dissatisfaction despite her wealth. "I thought the cottage would make me happy," she admitted, her voice breaking, "but I feel so empty." Emily listened, her heart softening. "I've been there, Sarah, but I've learned happiness comes from within, from doing what matters, from love and connection." Sarah's eyes glistened with tears. "You're right. I've been chasing the wrong things." The sisters spent days together wandering the city, visiting museums, laughing over childhood memories. They grew closer, rediscovering the bond they'd lost. When Sarah left, she hugged Emily tightly. "Thank you for everything. I love you." "I love you too," Emily replied, smiling. With Sarah gone, Emily felt a new warmth in her heart. She wasn't alone. She had a sister, a family, a connection that would endure. She vowed to nurture it, to support Sarah as Mary had supported them both. Emily's life moved forward with purpose. She worked, researched her family's past, and helped those around her. Each day she felt Mary's presence, her pride, her love. Driving the Volga through her new city, its engine rumbling like a heartbeat, Emily knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. A woman shaped by her grandmother's legacy, ready to face the world with courage, hope, and an unbreakable spirit.